I set the lemon pound cake down on the kitchen island, still warm, wrapped in the same blue dish towel I'd been using for 30 years, and I heard my son's wife say it from the hallway. "Oh, don't worry about her. She's basically our live-in help." She was laughing when she said it. Her friends laughed too, and my son Michael, standing right there with a drink in his hand, laughed along with them. I stood very still in that kitchen, holding the dish towel, listening to the sound of my own erasure. My name is Barbara. I'm 63 years old, a retired elementary school teacher, a widow of 3 years, and until that December evening, I thought I understood my place in my family. I thought I was loved. I thought I was seen. It turns out what I actually was convenient. It didn't start with a single moment. It never does. It starts the way water carves rock, slowly, patiently, without you ever noticing until the damage is already done. My son Michael is 42. He married Vanessa 11 years ago, and I want to be honest here because I think honesty is the only thing that makes a story worth telling. I liked Vanessa at first. She was sharp and funny and ambitious in a way that reminded me a little of myself when I was young. She had strong opinions about everything and wasn't afraid to say them, which I respected. My late husband Richard always said strong women run in good families. He meant it as a compliment. But somewhere in those 11 years, something shifted. It was gradual enough that I kept explaining it away. The first time Vanessa corrected the way I loaded their dishwasher, I laughed it off. When she started scheduling my visits rather than asking for them, I told myself she was just organized. When she began calling me by my first name in front of the grandchildren, I told myself it was modern, that things were different now, that I shouldn't be so sensitive. I was very good at not being sensitive. Michael and Vanessa lived 40 minutes from me in the newer part of town, one of those neighborhoods with HOA rules and identical mailboxes. They had 2 children, Tyler, who was 9, and Brooke, who was 6. I adored those kids. I would have done anything for them. I did do everything for them, and I think that was part of the problem. It started with babysitting. Could I take the kids on Tuesday? Of course. Could I pick them up from school on Thursday? Absolutely. Could I stay over Friday night because they had a work event? I'd be happy to. And then it wasn't could I anymore. It was, I need you here at 4, and make sure Tyler finishes his homework, and don't let Brooke have more than 1 juice box, and I know you don't mind. You love being with them. I did love being with them. But love isn't the same thing as consent. Then came the house projects. Vanessa redecorated every 18 months or so, which meant there was always something being sorted, donated, organized, or assembled. I helped because it was a way to spend time with Michael, or at least that's what I told myself. In reality, Michael was rarely home during these sessions. It was usually just me and a list. Then came the financial piece, the part I never talked about because it felt shameful somehow, like I'd been foolish. 3 years ago, when Michael and Vanessa decided to add a sunroom to the back of the house, they came up short on financing. Michael called and explained the situation, said it would just be temporary, said they'd pay me back within a year. I wrote a check for $18,000. I wrote it without hesitation because that's what you do for your children. I don't need to explain that to any mother reading this. The year passed. Then another. We never discussed the money again. I didn't bring it up because I didn't want to create tension. I didn't want to be the kind of mother who held money over her son's head. So I stayed quiet, and somehow in staying quiet, I became someone who could be ignored. The December dinner party was Vanessa's idea of a triumph. She'd been planning it for 2 months. A holiday gathering for Michael's professional contacts, people from the firm he'd recently made partner at, plus a handful of her friends from the neighborhood. 30 people total. She'd hired a caterer for the main courses but wanted homemade desserts because she told people she baked, which she did not. 2 weeks before the party, she called me. "I'm thinking your lemon pound cake, your pecan pie, and those shortbread cookies you do. Can you handle all 3? Not can you help me make them. Can you handle them?" Like I was a vendor she was sourcing. I said yes. Because I always said yes. I spent most of the day before in my own kitchen. I baked for 6 hours. The pound cake alone takes 2 hours start to finish if you're doing it right. And I do it right. I packed everything carefully and drove the 40 minutes to their house the following evening, arriving at 5:30 as instructed, 2 full hours before guests arrived. Vanessa met me at the door, phone in hand, barely glancing up. "Oh, good. Just put everything on the kitchen island. I'll arrange it later." She turned and walked back down the hallway toward the sound of a curling iron and a Bluetooth speaker playing something I didn't recognize. Michael appeared a few minutes later, looking handsome in the blazer I'd given him 2 Christmases ago. He hugged me briefly, the kind of hug you give a coworker you don't know well. "You're a lifesaver, Mom. These look amazing." He grabbed a shortbread cookie, bit into it, nodded approvingly, and disappeared back upstairs. So I stood in their kitchen, and I waited. Not because anyone asked me to wait, but because no one had told me what else to do, and I didn't want to get in the way. At 6 o'clock, Vanessa's friends began arriving. I could hear them in the entryway, the sounds of coats being taken and wine bottles handed off, and the particular high-pitched greeting energy that comes with a crowd of people who know they're about to have fun. I heard Vanessa saying, "I'm so glad you're here. Come in, come in." I heard Michael saying, "Let me take that." I rinsed a mixing bowl and waited. At 6:15, Vanessa swept into the kitchen with 3 women I didn't know. They were dressed the way Vanessa's friends always dressed, like they'd thought carefully about looking like they hadn't thought at all. One of them picked up a shortbread cookie and made a sound of genuine delight. "Vanessa, did you make these?" And Vanessa said, "Oh, those are from Barbara. She's basically our live-in help." She said it warmly. That's the thing I keep coming back to. She didn't say it with cruelty. She said it the way you'd say a fond thing about someone useful. A good neighbor. A reliable handyman. She said it the way you describe furniture. Her friends smiled vaguely in my direction. One of them said, "How sweet." And then they moved on, talking about something else, and I was still standing there with the dish towel in my hand. I don't know how long I stood there after they left the kitchen. It might have been 30 seconds. It might have been 5 minutes. I was doing a kind of internal inventory, the way you do when you've just heard something that rearranges something inside you and you need a moment to figure out what's been moved. I thought about the $18,000. I thought about the 6 hours I'd spent baking the day before. I thought about every Tuesday and Thursday and Friday night. I thought about the last time Michael had called just to talk, not to ask for something. I couldn't remember when that was. I folded the dish towel carefully and set it on the counter beside the lemon pound cake I had made with my mother's recipe, the one she'd taught me when I was 19 years old, and I went to find my coat. Michael found me in the entryway, pulling my keys from my purse. "Mom, where are you going?" "Dinner's in an hour." "Home," I said. He looked confused. "You can't leave yet. People haven't even tried the pound cake. They'll figure it out." "Mom!" He lowered his voice, glancing back toward the party sounds. "Don't do this right now." "I'm not doing anything," I said. "I'm going home." Because of what Vanessa said. He said it quickly, which meant he'd been there, or someone had told him, or he'd known enough to anticipate it. She didn't mean anything by it. That's just how she talks. I looked at my son for a long moment. This man I had raised, who I had watched, learn to walk and read and drive and grieve his father and build a life. And I thought, I wonder when you stopped seeing me. I wonder if you ever did. "I know," I said. And then I left. The drive home was 40 minutes of radio I didn't hear. My house was dark when I pulled in the way it always was now, because Richard wasn't there to leave the porch light on and I kept forgetting to do it myself. I went inside and sat at the kitchen table without turning on the overhead light, just the small one above the stove that I'd had on a timer since the fall. Michael texted at 8:30. "Mom, you're overreacting. Come back." I turned my phone face down. He texted again at 10. "This is embarrassing. We had to explain to people why you left." I thought about that for a while. The embarrassment of a missing dessert maker. I went to bed. My younger son Kevin called the next morning. Kevin is 38 and lives in Portland, where he teaches high school history and coaches junior varsity soccer, and generally operates as the person in our family who says the things everyone else is thinking. He and Michael have always had the kind of relationship where they love each other across a careful distance. David called me, Kevin said. He meant Michael. He sometimes slips and uses a different name when he's nervous, an old habit from childhood. He said, "You walked out of the party?" "I did." "He says you made a scene." I left quietly. There was no scene. A pause. "Mom, what happened?" I told him. He was quiet for longer than I expected. "She called you the help." "Live-in help," I said. "Technically." Another pause. And Michael didn't say anything. He laughed. I heard Kevin exhale slowly. "Okay," he said. "Okay. I've been waiting for you to be ready to hear this, and I think you finally are." Hear what? That this has been going on for a long time and I've watched it from 1,000 miles away and it's been hard to watch. I felt something loosen in my chest. The way a knot will sometimes loosen when you stop pulling against it and just let the rope go slack. You saw it? Mom, the Thanksgiving 2 years ago when Vanessa had you serving drinks at her own dinner table and you just did it. I almost said something. I remembered that Thanksgiving. I had served the drinks because Vanessa mentioned the caterer hadn't brought enough staff, and I just picked up the pitcher and walked around the table because it seemed like the thing to do. I hadn't thought of it as a problem at the time. I thought I was being helpful. "I know," Kevin said. That's what made it hard to watch. I asked him the question I was only just now able to ask. "Do you think I let it happen?" He was careful with his answer. The way he always was. "I think you were raised to take care of people, and some people will take as much care as you're willing to give. That's not your fault. But I do think you get to decide whether it keeps going." We talked for 2 hours. He told me things he'd been holding for years. Small observations, patterns he'd noticed, moments where he'd wanted to intervene. Hearing it from the outside was like being handed a photograph of a place you'd lived in for years and suddenly seeing its actual shape. Michael called 3 times that week. I let them go to voicemail. His messages moved through the predictable stages, annoyed, then confused, then something that edged toward conciliatory without quite arriving there. The third message ended with, "Mom, the kids are asking about you. Tyler wants to know if you're still doing Christmas cookies with him." Tyler and his Christmas cookies. I'd started doing that with him when he was 3 years old, standing on a step stool at my counter, pressing shapes into dough with more enthusiasm than precision. It was our tradition, not Vanessa's, not Michael's. Mine and Tyler's. I called Michael back on a Thursday afternoon. He answered on the first ring, which told me he'd been waiting. "Mom." "Finally." "I've been thinking," I said. "Look, about the party, I need you to listen first." Something in my voice must have been different because he stopped. "I've been thinking about the kind of relationship I want to have with you, not the one we have right now, the one I actually want." Silence. "I don't want to be useful to you," I said. "I want to be family." There's a difference. And for a long time, I let that difference disappear because it was easier than naming it. "Mom, no one ever said you weren't family. Your wife told her friends I was the live-in help while I was standing in the kitchen. And you laughed." He didn't say anything. "I need you to understand that I heard that. I need you to understand that it wasn't the first time something like that has happened. It was just the first time I was willing to stop pretending I hadn't heard it. I didn't." He stopped. Started again. "I didn't know you felt like that." "I know," I said. "I made it very easy not to know. I'm not doing that anymore." "So what does that mean? You're just done? You're gonna cut off your grandchildren over a dinner party?" There it was, the grandchildren. I'd been expecting it, and somehow expecting it still made it land hard. I'm not cutting off anyone, but I'm also not driving 40 minutes to be someone's unpaid caterer anymore. If you want me in Tyler and Brooke's lives, and I hope you do, then I need to be in them as their grandmother. Not as the woman who shows up when something needs baking or watching or cleaning. "You're being dramatic." "I'm being clear," I said. "I think you've mistaken the two because you're not used to me being clear." He hung up. I sat with the silence and found that it didn't feel as bad as I'd been afraid it would. It felt, strangely, like something I'd been holding for a long time had been set down. Kevin came to visit for Christmas. He flew in from Portland and slept on my couch, and we ate Chinese food on Christmas Eve because neither of us felt like cooking, and it turned out to be one of the better Christmases I'd had in recent memory. He met my neighbor Diane, who'd been bringing me soup since Richard died and who I'd been slowly realizing was one of the best friends I'd made in my adult life without ever quite giving the friendship its proper name. On Christmas morning, Kevin helped me rearrange my living room. We moved the furniture I kept in the same position for 15 years and found a configuration that made the room feel twice as large. It sounds like a small thing. It wasn't. It was the first time in a long time I'd changed something in my house just because I wanted to, not because someone was coming to visit, not because I was expecting to host, but simply because I could. "You seem different," Kevin said that evening. "I've been different for about 3 weeks," I said. "It suits you." Vanessa called in January. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. She sounded carefully composed, the way people sound when they've been rehearsing. "Barbara," she said, "I owe you an apology." I waited. What I said at the party. I've been thinking about it a lot. I was trying to be funny, and I wasn't funny, and I think somewhere along the way, I started seeing you as… She paused. As someone who was always going to be there. Like a resource. And that's not how I actually see you. "How do you actually see me?" I asked because I genuinely wanted to know. Another pause. "Honestly, I don't think I'd ever really thought about it. You were Michael's mom. You were always helpful. I think I just kind of arranged you." It was the most honest thing she had ever said to me. I appreciated the honesty. "I'm not great at this," she admitted. "Neither am I," said. "I think I made it easier for you to arrange me than I should have. I'm working on that." We talked for almost an hour. It was uncomfortable and sometimes clumsy and entirely unlike any conversation we'd had in 11 years of being family. By the end of it, I didn't feel healed exactly, but I felt like I'd finally met her. The real version, not the performed one. She suggested family therapy. I said I was open to it. Michael took longer, the way the people who are most in the wrong sometimes do, because the distance between where they are and where they need to be is the greatest. He called in February, on a Sunday morning. "Tyler keeps asking about the Christmas cookies," he said. "I told him you'd been busy." "I have been busy." "Doing what?" I thought about the past 2 months. Diane and I had started taking a watercolor class on Tuesday nights at the community center. I'd been sleeping better. I'd gone through the boxes in the spare bedroom and donated 4 bags of things I'd been keeping out of obligation, including Richard's old golf clubs that no one had touched in 5 years. "Living," I said. He was quiet. Then, "Mom, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry about the party. About how Vanessa talked about you. About the fact that I didn't say anything." Each sentence came out like it cost him something. "I've been thinking about it and I talked to Kevin and he told me some things I didn't want to hear and he was right." I let him finish. "I think I stopped seeing you as a person somewhere along the way. I saw you as mom, like mom is a function, not a who." He exhaled. "That's not an excuse. I know it's not. I know you know," I said. "Can we start over? Not like pretend none of it happened, but actually start over? Not like pretend none of it happened, but actually start over? Different? That's what I want," I said. "That's all I've wanted. I want the kids to know you, the real you, not just the you that shows up to help." "Then bring them to me," I said. "On a regular Saturday, no agenda, just a visit." "Yeah," I could hear him working through it. "Yeah, okay." They came in March, just the 4 of them. Vanessa texted ahead to ask if she could bring anything, which was new. I said just themselves. Michael looked the way people look when they're trying to behave well and aren't entirely sure they're doing it right. Vanessa was quieter than usual, more careful with her words. Tyler ran into the kitchen the moment they arrived and said, "Grandma, can we make the cookies?" We made the cookies. Brooke helped, too, which she hadn't been old enough to do the last time. She stood on the step stool in the same position Tyler used to, pressing a star-shaped cutter into the dough with total concentration, and I thought about continuity, about the things that pass from hand to hand without you ever announcing it. At some point in the afternoon, Michael came and stood beside me at the kitchen counter while the kids decorated their cookies at the table. Vanessa was in the living room reading something on her phone, giving us the space, which I noted. The sunroom came out nice, I said, because I'd seen the photos online. Michael looked at the table, not at me. We never paid you back. No, I want to talk about that. We can. I'm sorry it took this long to even bring it up. I looked at him, this complicated person I had made and loved imperfectly, who had done the same to me. People do things in their own time, I said. What matters is that you got there. He nodded, still not looking at me. Then he did, and for a second he looked like the boy he used to be before he learned to be careful and managed and impressive. I really am sorry, Mom. I know, I said. I really am sorry, Mom. I said, I really am too. In April, I updated my will. I'd been putting it off for years the way you put off things that require you to acknowledge your own mortality, but sitting down to do it felt less like confrontation and more like clarity. I divided everything equitably between Michael and Kevin. Kevin's portion was straightforward. Michael's I placed into a trust, not as punishment, but as what I can only describe as a requirement of love. His portion would release when he completed a year of family counseling. My attorney raised an eyebrow. I explained that I wasn't trying to control my son. I was trying to make sure he did the work that would let him be someone his children could count on the way children deserve to count on their parents. That's a very measured approach, my attorney said. I'm 63 years old, I said. I've been measuring things my whole life. I'm just finally measuring the right ones. Kevin came back in May for my birthday, which I'd not celebrated properly in at least 8 years, always deflecting, always saying don't make a fuss. Diane organized a small dinner. 7 people, my kitchen table, a lemon pound cake Kevin had quietly asked me to teach him to make so he could make it himself. He wasn't very good at it yet. The texture was slightly off, and the glaze was uneven, and I thought it was the best pound cake I'd ever tasted. At some point during dinner, Diane said, "You seem lighter. Not thinner. Lighter." I put something down, I said. Michael and Vanessa started family counseling in June. I know because Michael told me, not as a report, but in the way you tell someone about something you're proud of even though it's hard. They didn't ask me to join yet. That was fine. Some work has to be done before you invite other people into the room. Tyler called me on a Tuesday evening in July, which he had never done before. The calling, just to talk kind of call. He was 9, and the conversation lasted 4 minutes and covered the topics of a video game he was playing, a strange cloud he'd seen that looked like a dog, and whether I had watched anything good lately. At the end, he said, "Okay, bye, Grandma. I love you," the way children say it, entirely without performance, and hung up before I could respond. I sat with the phone in my hand for a while after that. The fall came, and with it, a version of life I hadn't expected to find at 63. I taught Diane's daughter how to make shortbread cookies. I finished the watercolor class and enrolled in the next session. I drove to Portland in October and watched Kevin's team play a soccer match in the rain, cheering from the sideline in a raincoat I bought specifically for the occasion, which felt extravagant and correct. Michael called more often. Not for anything. Just to talk. The conversations were sometimes halting, the way conversations are when 2 people are learning a new vocabulary with each other. But they were real in a way our conversations hadn't been in years. He told me things about his work, his anxieties, the way parenthood was harder than he'd expected. I told him things about Richard. Stories I'd never shared because I thought they'd seem irrelevant. They were irrelevant. He listened in a way that told me he was hungry for this, for the person his mother was, not just the function she performed. Vanessa and I were slower. We were building something more careful, more deliberate, the way you build something when you've both admitted the previous structure wasn't sound. We'd started having coffee once a month, just the 2 of us, and the conversation was better when Michael wasn't there to mediate or perform for. I still didn't entirely know her. but I was starting to. The December holidays came around again, a year after the party. I didn't go to their house for any large events. Instead, on the 23rd, Tyler and Brooke came to me for the cookies. We had perfected Brooke's star and added a new shape, a mitten, at Tyler's request. Vanessa came too and sat at my kitchen table with a coffee mug and watched her children with the expression of someone seeing something they'd been missing for a long time. At one point, Brooke climbed into my lap with a cookie half decorated and said, "Grandma, can you come to my school thing?" "What school thing?" I asked. "We're doing a thing about families, and we have to bring someone." I looked at Vanessa over the top of Brooke's head. She was smiling, the real kind, not the performed kind. "She's been talking about asking you for a week," she said. "I'd love to come to your school thing," I told Brooke. She leaned back against me, entirely satisfied, and went back to frosting her cookie. I sat in my kitchen, in my house, in my life, the one that had always been mine even when I'd forgotten that, and I felt the specific, quiet weight of being known. It wasn't the ending I would have written 5 years ago, when I still believed love meant making yourself as small and useful as possible. But it was the one I'd earned by finally refusing to disappear. I was Barbara. I was 63 years old. I baked a lemon-pound cake that had won a county fair ribbon in 1987 and that my grandson now called on the phone about for no reason. And that, it turned out, was enough. More than enough. It was everything.